I think it's kind of shown that, you know, here was a department that is good at dealing with incidents, that, you know, can react, and, you know, we're here 24/7. So I think that's been a very sort of positive side to it, because, you know, I say with regard to officers as well, you know, a lot of the senior staff aren't on site, you know, so it'd be hard for them to appreciate what staff are doing. And I know with the officers as well, you know, that they often feel forgotten. You know, does anyone know we're here? Does anyone care? Are they grateful? You know, and again, very early on, you know, we had a very active social media campaign where we show our officers, you know, patrolling an empty campus. You know, we were showing that we're still here. You know, we had officers holding signs saying, you know, we'll see you soon and stay safe. And, you know, we delivered some chocolates to our local hospital opposite us, UCLH, you know, delivering to the hospital staff. You know, we clapped for the carers, you know, and one of the great things, I mean, again, as Bill was saying about, you know, using the videos, we did a quick, you know, very cheap and cheerful time-lapse video of an officer walking through an empty campus. It was kind of like a, I don't know, 40-second clip, you know, obviously time-lapse, nice and sped up. And it went down so well. It was one of UCL's biggest clips. And, you know, it had hundreds of thousands of views just in China. You know, the officer who was in it, he thinks he's a film star now. You know? But as I say, we did all that for the right reasons, you know, because, you know, and the good thing about putting it on social media is you get comments, you get positive comments coming back from staff at every level, you know, students and external people as well. And, you know, I then feed those comments back to the team. I showed, you know, I take screenshots, show them the comments. And, you know, rather than me telling them you're doing a great job, you know, look at what the vice provost is saying about you, you know, look how much they appreciate you. You know, and the officers could see that, and then that meant a lot to them, you know, and it helps them and kind of boost their morale in a way.
Thank you. And you talked a lot, Oliver, about various plans, about the plans and the scenarios that you've had to work out. And what I'd like to ask is that, as you're fully aware, the ProtectED Code of Practice recommends universities have in place policies and procedures such as business continuity, disaster recovery, and so on. And what I'd like to know is, do you think that those plans and procedures, having those in place, has that helped you with regard to dealing with the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, I mean, it did from a security point of view. Absolutely, it definitely helped us. You know, we reviewed our plans in late 2019, just for a completely separate issue, you know, and again in early March 2020, you know, when we were sort of getting feel that, you know, something was coming, you know, we were hearing things like 70% of the population is going to catch COVID, you know, so we're all looking at each other like, oh, you know, what's coming. So, you know, our plans covered how to effectively operate with 75, 50, even 25% security staff, you know, in order to still have the university functioning, you know, so we could still operate. And, you know, we used that and we used that well. And as I say, but institutional plans, you know, at UCL, speaking to you know, and also speaking to a lot of people within also the walls of also, you know, it all seems to be pretty good. You know, to achieve what they've done in such a challenging and changing climate was remarkable. But, you know, I think that when it comes to departments, I think they weren't as resilient as maybe they could have been. You know, as I've said many times, you know, if the department's business continuity plan says security will do it, you know, it's a bad plan. You know, asking us to, you know, water the plants, feed the fish, walk the dog, put out the cat, you know, all of these requests, you know, it's just this, you know, it's something that you'd like to do, you know, but again, that was part of their plans. And like I said, you know, but when you're asking us to staff a position that they would normally do themselves, you know, that then puts the risk back on us. And that's kind of where the managers have to step in and, as I said earlier, say no. You know, it is difficult, you know, when you're trying to provide a service, a critical service, you know, you don't want to be the person saying no all the time, but, you know, we've had to for the sake of the team. So, you know, as I'm saying, I hope when the dust settles, you know, people will review their plans and make all the necessary adjustments, and, you know, we'll be more than happy to help them do that.
And what about for you, Bill? Have the plans that you've had in place helped you in dealing with COVID-19?
Yeah, I mean, we've got clearly our emergency plans, and then we've got our risk assessments, and then we've got our standard operating procedures. I think sometimes you write the plans in the cold scientific location. Actually, when it hits the reality, you do have to amend and bend the plans. And as Ollie was saying, if your business continuity plan one is contact security or contact your IT department, especially if you just had a cyber attack, for example, then it's really challenging, isn't it? And you therefore need to change straight away. We've go back to the answer I gave before. We've had to review and revisit on a regular basis our plans, our risk assessments, our standard operating procedures, because of the changes that we've had to accommodate over the last 12 months. So that regular review, that very active management of our risk assessments, of our standard operating procedures, or even of our BC plan, has been critical to make sure that it's reflective of where we are now. And because everything is changing and does change, and it will change again, in June, if we get to that 21st of June date, what does that look like for us coming back in September? Do we need to review our plans again? Will we still have 2 meters in place? Will we still have face masks, face coverings in place? Will we need to enforce those things? So that future looking activity will take place. But I think that very active management and that regular management of those standard operating procedures or risk assessments, it brings you closer to the front line, and to make sure that what you put in place is practical. But it may only live so long as the current guidance is in existence. And so therefore that flexibility, I think, in terms of your planning is really important. And I go back to those 2 words, active management of that, and the visibility of management, so they actually see what's going on the ground and can respond and then develop appropriate plans is really important. And so having plans really important, but keep reviewing those plans during a pandemic or a crisis or a critical incident is really important as well.
Thank you. And Bill, can I go on to ask you, with regard to the role of the security officer in the university context, one of the things that we're aware of, that it goes much broader than traditional concepts of security. It's about much more than manned guarding. It actually involves a lot of welfare issues and mental health issues. And what I'd like to ask you, do you feel that this broader conception of the security officer has been affected by COVID-19?
I think, if anything, it's reinforced the role. It's a hybrid role, isn't it? We have this element of so-called man guarding, or whatever it is called, which is the traditional security role. Well, clearly the university, the security around HE has moved to a different place now, and we're seeing that through the protected approach as well, in terms of we're looking at a large element around engagement, support of students and staff, and particularly we've seen the rise of issues around mental health, for example, supporting students who are in crisis because they've got no food, they've got no money, they need someone to talk to on a 24/7 basis. So that idea of security officer being principally here for manned guarding, and I don't like those words, by the way, they're awful words, I think is an outdated concept. And we're very much into the hybrid model where, yeah, we've got to check things, we've got to respond to alarms, we've got to check when gas alarms go off and whatever. That's one aspect of it. But the more important aspect for me is that engagement, that visibility, that support to students. So very much that more on that side of life than the man guarding. But we need to combine both. And so COVID has reinforced that, particularly for students who haven't been able to go home, for students who have been on campus all the time. They know they've got a number they can ring for 24/7. In fact, we have students turning up to say, can I speak to somebody? And they know where to go to. And just having that on campus is really important. We've got about 1,100 bed spaces on our campus in terms of our UCLAN provided accommodation. Not all of that is in use, because clearly people have gone home. When you think about, say, several hundred are still here and have been here throughout the last 12 months, to have a security availability of presence, which isn't just turning up and locking doors, but actually an ear to listen to students and to support them, is extremely important to support the students through this pandemic.
Thank you. And what about for you, Oliver? How has the broader conception of the security officer role been affected by COVID-19?
Yeah, again, Bill touched on a lot of good points, and I think I've always liked the comparison that a good security officer is like a Swiss Army knife. That they have all of these various skill sets that they, sort of ready to use, when called upon. you know, and again, everyone should always be careful. You know, the lack of training and development can turn these officers, you know, back into single purpose, if you like. And again, you know, the traditional concept, you know, kind of was saying, you know, while they're essential, you know, they're indeed becoming kind of secondary really to a lot of the newer aspects. You know, COVID safety, mental health, as we said, you know, being just a couple of them. And you know, and it's interesting, you know, for many years there's been a lot of talk in the security industry. You know, Bill's absolutely right to sort of call out the man guarding term. It's, you know, even security guards, you know, people saying, you know, it should be called security officers. You know, guard or guarding is kind of just seen as one aspect of their roles. And, you know, but it's interesting within the HE sector that, you know, there's even an appetite to replace the word security now, you know, for something a bit softer, you know, campus officers, safeguarding officers, etc. You know, and if not already, you know, COVID will change people's perceptions of institutional risks, you know, and therefore, you know, we must be able to adapt to that. And like I said earlier, if we want to continue to support the organisation in its daily activities, you know, we have to look at that. You know, being under the spotlight, as you know, we are, if you like, at the moment, you know, someone's paying attention, and as essential as I think we are, and a lot of us agree that we are, you know, I've no doubt many security departments will, you know, they won't escape the sort of budget reviews, as we'll call them. You know, again, a good manager will look to sort of use that, you know, to sort of see, you know, how can we use that to, you know, to our advantage? What opportunities can it bring? You know, and this is where associations like AUXO and as Amoshi and HEBCOM do as well. You know, you can help. You can, you know, it connects. These places connect people. You can talk to other people, discuss new ideas, and see where it benefits people. Because, you know, COVID will and probably should, you know, the conception of what a security officer does, you know, and we should embrace that. You know, for me, we have a fantastic student support and wellbeing team led by Denise Long, and you know, we've had a very effective and collaborative working relationship with her and her team for many years. But you know, something tells me that's just going to develop even further now.
Thank you. And at UCL, Oliver, you've got a lot of international students. Have they needed particular support during the COVID lockdown?
Yeah, again, yeah, we have. There's a lot of international students here, you know, but you know, obviously not as many now as what there was pre-COVID. But if you like, you know, the ones that we have here, if you like, you know, because again, a lot of our support services are virtual now. So sometimes, you know, we can be the only people they physically see, you know, and you know, we acknowledge that many parts of the last year have been strange and scary, if you like, for all of us. So when you're in another country, you know, away from family and friends, you know, for a lot of them, probably for the first time, you know, obviously it can be very daunting. So, you know, it's something we realised early on, we needed to be aware of that, and, you know, where possible, if you like, show empathy. You know, so international students, you know, we deal with them in the residences, we deal with them on site when they come to the study spaces. You know, crime prevention advice as well. You know, there's a lot of new crimes coming out of, you know, the COVID, and you know, especially, you know, my colleague Sophie Bimpson, you know, she's our crime prevention and personal safety advisor, and you know, she does an amazing job, and you know, she's very active in giving sort of online talks, having one-to-ones with students who are going through difficulties, you know, writing articles in order to stay safe. But although probably not today, it's her birthday today, and yeah, she's probably on her second bottle already.
I'm pretty sure she's here actually.
She is here.
I think I saw her in the chat. Yeah,
the eyes are glazed over, don't they?
So in terms of like emerging crime problems, what sorts of problems are those?
Again, I mean, what we have seen a lot of is, you know, we know fraud's a big one, you know, because you know, the criminals can't get out. You know, they can't go and do whatever they normally do and steal a bike. There's no bikes here. You know, students here with laptops. But you know, they've sort of had to adapt, if you like, and you know, so again, there's a lot of the online thing has been a real challenge. And again, how do you get that message out? You know, when everything's new to you, you know, how can you sort of try and distinguish between what's right and what's wrong? And again, it's going to be a challenge for us going forward. You know, when you know we're already making plans for September, but hopefully, you know, we can get a lot of our numbers back. And you know, students, you know, they are targets to these people, so it's very much our job to try and, you know, highlight those things.
Thank you. And Bill, for you at UCLan, is there a lot of need to look after international students in particular?
Yeah, very much like Ollie. You know, we've got international students who are here, who've remained, who either couldn't get back to the country of origin, or were happy to stay here. Or we have people who are studying from abroad online, so there's a hybrid picture there. We recognize that, it's important that we support those individuals who are here on campus, who may not want to have been here on campus, would have liked to departed. But having a link very closely with our student services, which I think is critical to that overall provision of services, having that 24/7 availability, contact number, location as well on campus. We do support our international students as we do with national students who are here, but I think having that response and that link immediately to welfare around mental health needs, food provision, even financial provision where there's hardship, has been really important. And the university's done really well around this in terms of our student support over this entire period. As Ollie says, a lot of staff are working from home, but we've still got staff on campus. We've still got staff who are contactable, via telephone or via on the computer. So those links are still there, really, and being able to support international students, particularly recognizing the situation they are in, and given in some respects the vulnerability that they've got, is really important. And as long as you recognise that and you respond, and we have, like Ollie, we have, then that's really important. Ollie, we talked about online crime. Yeah, that they are important factors that we need to work closely with our internal communications team to get some key messages out, and also work closely with the student union. And we have a strong link with our local students union and the head of the student union to make sure that we get that they also send messages out, not just from the university, but from the SU as well. So using as many lines of communication to get into our international students as well as national students has been really important for us over this pandemic, particularly when there aren't classes going on, and particularly when classes are online.
Thank you. And can I, Bill, go on to ask you, how do you think lockdown has affected student perceptions of university security?
What we tried to do is to maintain a very friendly, approachable position with our students. The vast majority of our students have been very compliant, been very good indeed. But we wanted to, as I mentioned before, we instituted this body of people called the Campus Safety Champions in September. They're back with us now again over this in the last few months as well. And they are students or student ambassadors who are employed to go in and walk the campus and engage with students who may not be, got the face coverings on, or may not be keeping a social distance. And so that, sort of getting those softer messages out through fellow students has been really important. But maintaining good relationships with students throughout this pandemic is critical. And that's why, we talked before about man guardian, trying to go away from that thought into the support focus and very much, visible presence with a security sort of link, but engaging and supporting students. So we have members of my team who are available every night, working in halls of residence on campus, who know the students, who recognise them when they're not complying with COVID rules, and we've had a few, and then enforcing those rules where needs be. But I think that visible presence, that regular presence, and the ability to enforce rules, well, actually we don't want to. We want people to govern themselves safely and manage themselves safely. It's about getting the balance right. And we think now we've got a pandemic in 2021. What are we going to be like in September onwards? And maintaining that balance and that engagement, that relationship with our students, it's vital we get it right now, so that when we do go into hopefully a less constrained environment, that that relationship will endure as well. So that relationship is really important. But where we have to enforce rules.
And what about for you, Oliver? Are your security staff more in a sort of policing or parental role? Are they having to enforce rules? I mean, one of the particular issues that's raised is with regard to student parties. So has that, do you think, affected the way that students perceive university security?
Yeah, and yeah, it's a real mixture. It really is, and I say most students get it. They understand what we've done and what we're trying to do. some, on the other hand, you know, they're just invincible, aren't they? You know, they will completely flout the rules, and they'll argue with us. You know, they know better. You know, and it's the problem all institutions are having. You know, we have weekly in the also London region. You know, we have weekly meetings now. We've had that for probably nearly a year, and you know, we discuss these things, and it is, you know, it is an issue, if you like. You know. And as I said, you know, but when you look at what we're now asking them to do, if you like, you know, to wear the mask, stay 2 meters away, stay left, you know, wash your hands, don't eat there, you know, stay in your rooms, you know, don't socialize. You know, these are things we'd never have said 12, 18 months ago. You know, and again, a good security department, you know, it needs to build its trust with its community, you know, much like the police do, you know. So when the people you're trying to protect, if you like, you know, when they think you're being over the top, you know, it can lead to, you know, unwanted confrontations, let's say. But that being said, you know, as I said, I think the majority of students do get it. You know, they do appreciate what we do. You know, and as I said earlier, you know, we're making plans for September now, when we hope, you know, to see many more students, you know, returning to our buildings.
So going on to that, Oliver, do you think that any of the changes that you've seen in the university security role will continue after the universities reopen?
Yeah, I hope so. You know, I mentioned earlier, you know, security departments can often be seen as that kind of grudge spend, you know, so getting what you want can kind of be a real uphill struggle. You know, I know a lot of security departments have shone during this pandemic, you know, and this will hopefully then lead to better trust with senior managers. And if there are any changes, then hopefully it'll be a kind of a conversation more than an instruction. You know, we've seen the pressures, as I said earlier, you know, on our senior managers, and you know, the last year, you know, sometimes, you know, they just need quick results and that fast action, if you like. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, sometimes you don't have the time to debate things, you know, and you have to move quick. But again, you know, something we touched on before, and as Bill as well, you know, if you're seated at the right tables, you know, and you bring your expertise, then hopefully everyone wins. And you know, so I'm not just saying, you know, I'm not saying that change, if it comes, will be drastic. You know, every institution is going to be different. You know, we're all different. But as I think if it does, it's just we need to be in the right position to change. You know, when that change, if you like, is kind of forced upon us. And you know, management have to spend some time, you know, of our own time thinking about the future. You know, we have to plan for things, and you know, that's why we create our risk registers, and we identify the training needs, and you know, pertaining to each individual sort of risk. But you know, no amount of training could have helped slow down COVID. You know, as I said before, all of us we were thrown into the ocean at the same time, and some of us sank, some treaded water, and some of us swam to safety. And this is the sort of stuff that has to continue.
Thank you. And for you, Bill, do you think that some of the changes that have taken place in terms of the university security role will continue after you reopen?
Yeah, like Ollie, I think it will. I think we're going to have to continue to live with COVID. I think, you know, the way we're going with the vaccinations and that, and what's the new virus going to look like in the future. I think it'll be here to stay for a number of years yet. We'll see. But I think we'll continue to live with the impact of it. I think, you know, what we've seen so far, we'll continue into in terms of that engagement, supportive role with students, and yet, you know, if required, enforcing as well. And that's that balance we've got to get right. I think the visibility will remain, and I think that requirement on us to provide that reassurance, that 24/7 friendly face, who can link in with other parts of the university, this other parts of this very complex organisation. I think that will continue. I think, you know, we are planning for September, but it'll be a slightly different environment. And I think there'll be trepidation on a number of staff and students coming back to a university campus, given the situation that we've had over the last 12 months. I know there's a bit of reticence, you know, to come back onto campus. Hopefully that'll change. You know, we're a COVID secure campus like Ollie's is. We do our best to promote the safety of our students and our staff. So those changes will go into the next academic year. But I think the question around flexibility, we've got to remain flexible to respond to what happens. We don't know what's going to happen in September, but we need to remain flexible and adapt. So adaptive and flexible are really important. I think, and Ollie mentioned it before, the role of AUXO in this. and Trevor as the chair of ORCSO, and the role of the regional ORCSO as well has been really helpful to share our understanding of what's happening across the wider HE sector from a security perspective. So those outward-looking links to other organisations are really important to continue into the future, so we get the right feel across the HE sector with regard to, you know, what is the movement in terms of security and moving away from man guarding, those horrible words, into something a bit more balanced.
Thank you. And can I go on to ask you, Bill, as you know, the ProtectED Code of Practice is an extensible platform so that we can always add new instruments, and we're always obviously looking to the future. And so in light of your experience over the past year, how do you think university policies, procedures and practices needed to be adapted in light of these developments?
I think there are some things that will feature largely going forward into our policies, our procedures. You know, the well-being of staff, how we look after our staff, for example, our continued focus on mental health. One thing we know which we want to get back into fairly quickly is the renewed training for our staff, which has been paused slightly because of the pandemic, and we've started again recently. And you know, so the issue around business continuity, what does that look like, and how do you keep changing and adapting because of the changing business needs? And so university policies will continue to change. I think they've got to keep in pace with what's going on outside the walls of this hallowed ground, and if we don't, then we'll be missing a trick. So yeah, I think adaptability to what's going on around us will be critical in terms of how we shape our internal policies, procedures. Our risk assessments, for example, will change. You know, our standard operating procedures will change again. And I think, you know, that active management and living with these documents and changing them so that they reflect what's required of us will be part of our future as we go into the new academic year.
Thank you. And what about for you, Oliver? Can you see policies, processes and practices having to be adapted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bill summed that really well. And so I can't speak for sort of every part of the university, but I do know the next emergency won't be the same as the last one, you know. So whenever or whatever changes people make, you know, they've got to be realistic as well. You know, it's been said before that, you know, the best gift to anyone with business continuity responsibilities, which in my view is everyone, is a near miss. You know, you learn from it and you build on it. And COVID was obviously very impactful, but, you know, it could have been a lot worse. You know, imagine if we had the death rates that you had with Ebola, for example. You know, so again, and this is the thing, and it's going to shout out to obviously ProtectED, that, you know, a lot of the work is obviously assessing the work done by the universities, you know, looking at the safety, security and well-being of our students. And, you know, you've identified the link between, you know, safety, security and well-being, which, you know, really have been three key words throughout this pandemic. You know, whatever happens going forward, you know, I think these three words, you know, they have to constantly remain linked. You know, and again, for any institution to you know, to be independently assessed and have proven, if you like, their commitment to these three strands is, you know, to me, it's no longer an option. It's kind of a necessity now.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you to you both. That's the end of my questions. I'll hand back to Andrew. You're going to have a look at the questions for our speakers.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Bill. I'm just looking at the Q&A box. We have a couple of questions in there. First one from James Francis of Unite Students. How have your security teams dealt with breaches of COVID rules which can impact their safety? For example, large gatherings or parties within accommodation. Do you want to tackle that one first, Ollie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, as I hinted to earlier on, it probably is, you know, it's up there with one of the biggest challenges, because, you know, I think, you know, on the one hand, we do understand that this is, you know, this is where they live. You know, this is their you know, it's kind of like, in a way, it's their property there. But then at the same time, you know, by trying to protect the entire community, sometimes you know, you've got to step in and speak to them. I mean, again, we've had you know, we've had to, probably from an extra resource point of view, we had to bring in a lot of extra security for residences. you know, at the request of the resident staff in a way, because it's just the numbers. You know, I'm probably going back to, you know, September, October last year. I think October, that was a very difficult month for us. You know, a lot of students turning up, and then, you know, with Halloween at the end of the month, you know, that was seen as a sort of you know, a bit of a party season. And, you know, on the one hand, you know, we can understand it. You know, we can understand frustrations and say this is kind of where the empathy part has to come into it. But then on the other hand, you know, you do have a lot of other students that are very concerned that, you know, with these groupings. So again, you know, for us, you know, it was very much supporting the on-site residence teams. You know, we'd issue sort of letters to people to sort of remind them of you know, what the rules are, and as I say, just kind of support, you know, people like James and co, you know, whenever we could, really.
Okay, thank you. And what about yourself, Bill?
We've linked in very closely with our SU and our SU president and team in terms of, you know, our approach to breaches potentially. We've thankfully we've not had many parties at all on our campus, because we think that the students have largely accepted the challenges that COVID presents. We have had some breaches. Clearly, I think most places will have had breaches. And where we found them, we've either had words of advice, or because it was so critical to us, you know, we've had to refer them back in to the university because of the breach, the type of breach that it was. But we also understand the situation in which our students have been. And I go back to some of the points that both Ollie and I have said before in terms of supporting the students, giving them advice, because we're all in this strange world where people have got to follow different rules, and you know, the challenges that presents when you're cooked up in a halls of residence and then can't go out. Recognizing those challenges are really important, and recognizing where students are coming from. So supporting is the first critical thing, and advising. Now, sadly, where people don't follow that advice, then we've got those internal processes that we agreed with the SU to follow. We don't want to go there. We want people to follow the rules and look after themselves, because, you know, critically, life is more important than a party. Forgive me for saying that. People may disagree with me, but a vast majority of our students have understood that and have complied completely, which has been great news.
Thank you. I know that it puts your guys in your teams in a difficult position, because it's a much more confrontational sort of policing type role than perhaps normally your officers would be dealing with on a day-to-day basis, when, as you said, Ollie, it's more about a sort of this whole well-being approach, whereas this is actually much more of a traditional, you know, parental, almost keeping people in line role.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. So the next question I have is from Andy Shulton, I think of OCS, who asks a bit about the mental health question. So his question is, student mental health is something that has been a growing concern over the past few years. The impact of COVID-19 on student mental health is a real concern longer term. What are you and your teams doing to support students who have these difficulties now? And do you see that changing in the future? Ollie, do you want to go first again?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you're absolutely right. You know, student mental health has been talked about for many, many years. And, you know, a large part of our team have undergone the first aid mental health training, you know, because, you know, it's literally seen as kind of, you know, institutional priority in a way. One of the problems we've had, before I come back to that question, is, you know, because the opportunities, you know, the lack of training sometimes meant that we haven't been able to keep up with that. So we've had to make sure that when we have our emergency rosters, you know, we've got the staff that are sort of trained, if you like, to deal with a lot of these issues. Because, as I said earlier on, you know, the groups that deal with student mental health, you know, these are our student support services. We've got a very large team. They're all fantastic and they do a great job. But sometimes, you know, we are the people there 24/7, you know, so we do need to have our staff, if you like, prepared for that. I once had one of our supervisors approached me once to say he was complaining about us sending him on a first aid course, and, you know, he said, you know, in the last year, or, you know, the last 3 years, I've probably had to put one plaster on. He said, but pretty much every night I'm dealing with these issues with students and mental health, you know, and this is, you know, where we should be focusing on. So, you know, I fully get the point, and like I said, it's a challenge, and it's kind of like what I said earlier on about you know, us working, you know, we work very closely with our student support team, and I think that's going to just continue, because I think we all expected it to be quite hard this year, and again it has been, you know, honestly probably more again for the other departments than us, but I think going forward with returning students, it's going to be difficult. So yeah, we all need to up that.
Thank you. And Bill, at UCLan, what sort of things are you doing, and do you see anything changing in the future?
Like Ollie said, you know, we mental health is a big issue for us in terms of how we understand and work with students. We've had all our staff go through mental health first aid training. We've literally just completed a refresher training course for a number of our staff in March. Again, putting training back in, trying to get away from the COVID restrictions. I think I see our staff as being a signpost. So if they come across students who are in critical help and need critical help, is to refer them to the appropriate agencies, depending on the time of day of the week. We will engage very closely, and we work very closely with our student services and a team. So if we need to refer very quickly for mental health support, then we'll make that referral. Where there's an urgent need for mental health at hospitals, you know, to take them to statutory services, but then we will support students to get to statutory services as well, where we can't provide that service ourselves. We have, like Ollie, a rota, you know, 24/7. We've got a team of student services on-call managers, and they also are available to help make decisions around how we support our students. So we've got a 24/7 escalation process in place where we can provide support. I think the training for our security staff, our security team, is really important, so that they can be that first contact, and then can be that point of referral into other agencies, either internally or externally, to support that individual.
Okay, thank you very much. And our third question here from Lyndon Brown of Solent University, Southampton. And his question is, did you have many police-led patrols or police accessing the campus to issue fines to residents, and how was that process managed? And was advance notice given, for example? And he notes that the police interpretation of the COVID household rules differed to university guidance in some respects. And so how did you convey the university guidance to your local police representatives? Can I go back to you, Bill, for that one first?
Yeah, we've got a really good relationship with our local police. And so I've asked for patrols around our campus, just in terms of the visibility and reassurance. In terms of, and that's been really good. Lancashire Police have been really good with us in terms of supporting us throughout this pandemic. Where we get to breaches, we've not had any. I don't think we've had. I can't recall any where people have been issued. I had one, I think. I can't remember now the numbers, but very small number, if anything, if any, where the police have been onto campus to enforce the rules, because they know that I have a team here 24/7 who are engaging with students, who are the face of the university, and who will, if there are breaches, we will deal with it internally. And that approach has worked really well. But if there was something that was a big, massive party, which we've not had, and the police came onto campus, then that's fine. Yeah. We will support the police with that equally. But I go back to the point I said before. The vast majority of our students understand the situation, recognise the challenges, and have worked with us to make sure that those COVID compliance has been maintained. Where we haven't had those, in very, very few cases, then we've gone through our internal processes.
Thank you. And Ollie?
Yeah, thanks. Morning, Lyndon. It's a bit early for you, actually, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, absolutely. And again, very much like Bill. So police on campus, no, residence buildings, yeah, they have turned up sometimes, because you've either got people within residences that's called them, or you've got local neighbours that have called them and they've seen something they're happy with. So sometimes they did turn up. And again, they've come in, they've issued fines. So again, sometimes that's kind of just thrown upon you, but we then liaise with our local police and we speak to them about what's happening, and about if we need their support. And as Bill says, we try and deal with this internally first. You don't really want to be calling the police on your own students, but sometimes they do come along, and again, you do try and engage with them and support them. And again, it's kind of funny. There's a bit mixed. Sometimes they'll turn up and just have a chat. Sometimes they'll issue fines. I don't know if that depends on how busy they are or a particular office, but it can be a bit mixed. But like I say, yeah. So yeah, we have had them, and again, we will try and support, but we will try and deal with it first ourselves if we can.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's all the questions from our attendees. I have one question myself, if you don't mind. Given that we're all at the moment working remotely in our boroughs behind our screens, and obviously all of our students have been online and teaching online during lockdown, have you seen increase in issues relating to cyber safety, security and well-being? Especially I'm thinking, I know fraud was mentioned earlier, but I'm thinking more about the cyber bullying, stalking, all the sort of harassment that can go online. And I was wondering whether that you'd seen increased reports of that, or is that something that you're thinking is on the rise, or something that you're having to deal with, or is it dealt with by other parts of the institution? Can I start with you, please, Ollie?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, again, we've seen it. Whether it's an increase, it's very hard to tell because, not everyone is here. And maybe if you are studying from your home country, you might report it to, local people. So,
yes,
it's definitely going on. And again, my colleague Sophie, if she's still with us, she deals with a lot of that. And, it is, again, for us, we can see it happening. I mean, my mother-in-law was texting me the other day saying about, somebody sent me this message and I've got to ring up and pay this, and you're like, no, you don't. And I think that's the thing. The challenge is because I think a lot of people, when they become victims of that kind of cyber attack, or they don't always report that. It's one of these I'm going to say crimes that is that some people don't report. And we encourage it. Sophie is out there saying to people, look, come and tell us, come and tell us, come and tell us. And again, UCL is it has got very good sort of signposting services. So absolutely, it might go to other people. It might go to sort of local people. But all we can do is when it comes across our desk, we'll just help and support as best we can.
Okay, thank you. And Bill?
Yeah, I've seen a small number of reports come across my desk in terms of this. I think the key thing for me is to work with our student union and with our internal comms to get some key messages out to our students to warn them around phishing and all the types of attacks that they may suffer. And then, as Ollie says, when we do get them, we'll refer them to the right agency so that they get the immediate support or the advice. And so I don't see that at this stage as a growing development. But as Ollie says, some people may not report it to us because they may not be on campus, they may be at home, wherever they are in the country or in the world. And so therefore we may not see that full picture. It'll be interesting in September when people do return to campus, whether we get more reports of that, whether we get sort of anecdotal reports as well. But at the moment, it's another type of activity where, because people are stuck in their houses or their rooms, they feel more victimized because of it, because they can't really get out. And I think having a security presence available 24/7 is a great place to go to for help and advice, and then we'll refer on if needs be.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, that's all we've got time for. Thank you to everyone for your questions and for attending this ProtectED Reflections webinar. And thank you so much, Ollie and Bill, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us this morning. The video recording of this session will be made available shortly on the ProtectED website and on our YouTube channel. Our next ProtectED Reflections event will be on Thursday, the 29th of April at 11 AM, where we will be discussing the issue of digital poverty and the student experience. Full details will be available on the events pages of our website shortly, but please do save the date. And all that's left is for me to say thanks again to our speakers and to all of you for joining us. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Goodbye.